headwear on, but they are ready to have some serious business and play some Magic. Game 1 of 5 of our semifinals is underway. Boettcher is going to begin with a Blood Crypt, Friedman with a Temple of Silence.
Yeah, and a lot of development here going on. Remember, both players do have 4 pack rats, so there's a little bit of a pack rat check going on. Jared does have a Dreadbore at the ready for Ben's pack rat. He also has one of his own.
And he also has a Mutavault to go along with it. So Friedman will be taking a draw here in just a moment, see if he does have the removal spell, or maybe just a pack rat in this instance, and it will be a Devour Flesh to get that thing off of the table. So Boettcher with the first test, and Friedman does have the answer to the pack rat. Boettcher will untap those 2 lands. He will take a draw here. It'll be a grindy affair, as these Black Devotion matches are. There's a swamp, and we'll see if maybe he has a connections. And the answer is yes, he does. So a good start here from Jared.
I want to go back to see how tap lands kind of affect this matchup. So that pack rat forced Ben to Devour Flesh, and because he had a tap land turn 1, he was never able to Thoughtseize here, so that Underworld connections got to resolve. Fortunately for Ben, he had a Banishing Light for the connection, so he's not just going to get card drawn out of the game.
He is a man with a lot of answers, and Underworld Connections gets taken care of by Banishing Light. Now Boettcher's going to present another question in Desecration Demon. We'll see if Ben has the answer to this as well. He's going to lead with that Thoughtseize that he's been holding for a little while. You'll see a Dreadbore, Blood Crypt, and a Gray Merchant of Asphodel. So you can't say Boettcher's draw wasn't good, because it certainly was.
It was a good draw, but Ben's draws are a little bit stronger right here. You see Thoughtseize is going to go ahead and take care of, I would imagine, that Dreadbore. He has a Devour Flesh for the Desecration Demon, and Ben is sculpting a game plan up to Elspeth Sun's champion.
So Friedman will take a look here with a Thoughtseize. Take 2 to do so, so he is down to 18, and he will figure out exactly what card he does want to select in just a moment here. And he will go with the Gray Merchant, so no fear of the Dreadbore. Maybe he does have another discard spell. We'll see. This is just going to be a Swamp and a Devour Flesh, so Boettcher's going to move up to 27, but his 6/6 is off the table. Outside of that Mutavault, he doesn't really have a lot going on, as he does untap those 4 lands and takes a draw.
I'm interested in the play by Ben. So he's trying to adjust. The way he's playing it is, rather than trying to set up a game for Elspeth, he looks like he's just trying to go late. He just wants to take all of Jared's action off the table, and is fine just kind of sitting around.
Mutavault's going to go chipping away. In for 2 comes Boettcher. Friedman goes down to 16. Now Friedman's going to play Pack Rat on turn number 5. It's either 2 or 5. Normally we see with Pack Rat. And of course, you do it on 5, so you can activate it if your opponent does have a removal spell, which Boettcher has 1, but he's going to need another one to get that off of the table. This is a Nightveil Spectre.
Yeah, so now we see the true intention of why Ben left the Dreadbore. It's not about the Elspeth, it's about this Pack Rat. There's a little bit of a concern for him. Jared has 2 red mana up. Remember, Jared plays 2 main decked Mizium Mortars, so he's going to need a Mortars and a red source. It's a lot to ask for, because we know his last card's Dreadbore, but there is an answer to Pack Rat. He's not one of those decks that's just black decks that's cold the second Pack Rat.
Boettcher offering up a Mutavault for trade if Ben wants to trade a Rat token or Pack Rat itself with it. Ben declines, takes 2, goes down to 14. He will activate Pack Rat at the end of turn, discarding a Lifebane Zombie. Boettcher will again pass the turn over to Friedman, who does have 2 2/2s in play, and they are coming into the red zone with the ability for so much more if Friedman would like.
Yeah, I think he's going to make a 3rd rat. Ben's just on the rat plan here.
And there goes an ultimate price. That's not going to be very useful right now, given what Boettcher has on the table. So now those are 2 3/3s, again with the ability to become 4 4s if Ben would like to activate that Mutavault. And it looks like he would, as he does do a little bit of math here, see how much damage is going to be coming across. The one thing to keep in mind here, however, is that he does not have an answer right now to this Nightveil Spectre. So even though Boettcher is behind, he could catch back up here.
Yeah, but here's what I like about how Ben's playing it. You think about the extra cards. Nightveil Spectres are usually pretty good with extra cards. But what Jared needs to answer this is he needs his next 2 draws to be basically a red source and Mizium Mortars. If they're not the next 2 draws, then they don't answer the rats in time. Nightveil Spectre provides extra draws, but he's not going to find a red source or a Mizium Mortars in Ben Friedman's deck. And so there aren't actually cards in Ben's deck that deal with this. So you look at the cards Ben plays, he doesn't, for example, he doesn't have any Bio Blights. I don't think Ben's worried about the free card. There's not much he can do.
Jared is taking the aggressive approach here. He says, Dreadbore, one of those, get in here for 6. I'm going to try to race you. It's tough to race a Pack Rat, but he's got to try. So he gets it with 2 Mutavaults. He does find an Elspeth Sun champion off of that Nightveil Spectre. It certainly won't help, but you can certainly see that Boettcher does have a game plan right now.
He has a game plan. An unfortunate card for him to chop off the top, is it's one of the few things he will never be able to cast in Ben's deck.
I imagine that what Jared's looking for right now is a Gray Merchant off of the top. Even though Ben doesn't have any, maybe he finds one off the top of his own deck right now. Obsidat, a card that in a perfect world he'd like to find, but again, he can't cast that one either. If he can't cast Elspeth, he certainly can't cast Obsidat. So the cards that he can find off of Friedman's deck aren't so great, all things considered, but more importantly is the damage that is being dealt by the Spectre in the air, as Friedman's going to go tapping some mana here. You see a Desecration Demon in his hand, and it looks like he's going to discard Elspeth to make a Rat, fire at Mutavault. We're going to get in the red zone here for 4, 8, 9, 10. Boettcher's down to 9 as he does untap and take a draw here in just a moment.
Yeah, I think ideally the card that Boettcher finds is Whip of Erebos. It gains him life. I'm not sure it gains him life fast enough.
Yeah.
It could whip back his own Gray Merchant. As you said, Friedman doesn't play Gray Merchants.
And for 2, there's a Desecration Demon, not the best draw in the world there for Boettcher. Again, those pack rats, they don't mess around. They close games out quick. You see Friedman's at 6, which isn't very much, but Boettcher might not be able to deal these last points of damage. He's going to play a Temple of Malice here and take a look at the top card of his deck, see if he finds something that he likes, and he certainly doesn't right now. That card immediately going to the bottom of the deck.
And I don't know if he can stay alive here. Remember, Desecration Demon's not actually a blocker because Ben can just tap through it with a rat token if he wanted.
He might just have 2 Mutavaults on chump blocking duty and throwing those away. And I don't know if that leads to a win or not. I suppose what Boettcher can do here, assuming that Friedman has nothing, is he can block 2 rats with 2 Mutavaults. 1 rat gets through along with, I assume, a Mutavault, but that's not going to be lethal. And then Boettcher might have the ability to, again, attack with Nightveil Spectre, top deck a Gray Merchant, and get the job done. I think that's Boettcher's best chance to win this game. And we'll see if he does come to that conclusion as he does pass the turn back over to Friedman. Friedman draws a card. It's a copy of Underworld Connections. That one doesn't matter all that much. So he's got those 3 rats with the ability to make more. You see him reaching for the Mutavault right now.
Yeah, say that draw looks like a pack rat to me. Yet another one. We will see. Ben knows that he has lethal in 2 turns, so things he has to watch out for are can't make sure Jared has a lethal attack back. He also has to make sure that he would like to close the Gray Merchant door if possible. That one's probably not possible because he can't stop 2 damage in the air, and Gray Merchant would deal 5. So he's just dead to the Gray Merchant top deck.
Yeah, he needs to fade a top deck is what it looks like here. I don't think he has any other choices. Mutavault's going to get in front of, I believe it's going to be, I'm assuming it's 2 rats, not rat plus Mutavault. Yeah, so there are your blocks. Yeah, he says, I'm going to block 2 rats. It looked a little bit strange because he kind of just pushed him in front of those creatures. I think it's very clear, though, between the players exactly what's happening here. So Boettcher
down to 2. Yep, he took 7. Did he draw the Gray Merchant?
No, looks to be a Mutavault along with the Thoughtseize in his hand.
I had Thoughtseize here for style.
Yeah? Go out with a bang?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would show him I didn't top deck it.
Boettcher's going to attack, see if there's anything he can find. It's a copy of Ultimate Price. Friedman's at 4, but that's not 0. Boettcher's going to pick up his permanents. Ben Friedman is going to win game number 1 here over Jared Boettcher. Black-White mid-range up a game over Black-Red Devotion.
Black-White mid-range doing exactly what it was designed to do in the mirror. If you think about the things that he did that a normal black deck can't do, it was he cast a Banishing Light to take care of an Underworld Connections. Yep. He had some Planeswalkers, some Elspeths. They were able to take care of the game. Those are very powerful things he's able to do.
It is trivia time, my friends. It's time for our 6-month giveaway. Matthias will have the rules, and I will have the question.
All right, so rules same as last round. If you can correctly answer this question Cedric's going to ask, do tweet that answer at us. Make sure that you're tweeting at SCG Live with this hashtag you see on the bottom. It's hashtag SCG Premium. At the conclusion of the match between Burton Sheeney and Ross, we'll give away 6 months of Star City Games Premium.
That's correct. We've got a long semifinals to make our way through. So again, this is about accuracy, not speed, as we will ask a pretty simple question, all things considered. You're going to take a look at Boettcher's sideboard here. He does, you mentioned Whip of Erebos. That's a pretty good card. That's a God's Weapon. He also has another God's Weapon in his sideboard, a one of. And if you can't name that other God's Weapon in his sideboard, hashtag the answer with the hashtag of SCG Premium. And again, make sure you're following at SCG Live. And we will announce the winner at the conclusion of our total semifinal round. So it'll be a little ways, well, we assume a little ways from now. Given how quickly our quarterfinals went, that may not be the case.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens here in the semifinals. As we turn our attention back to the match right now, it's time for a little sideboard analysis. We will start with Ben Friedman. He's up a game right now. And you see he's got some nice options here. 2 Sin Collector, Banishing Light, and Underworld Connections. Bile, Blight, Deicide, 2 Doomblade, 2 Freakus Cure, an additional Obsidat to the 2 in his main deck, a Whip of Erebos, a Erebos God of the Dead, and 2 Duress. A lot of good options here for Ben.
Yeah, a lot of one-of, so let's start at the top. This is, as we've seen before in these blackish mirrors. It's a lot about tearing apart your opponent's hand and protecting your own threats. To that effect, you have to think that Duress is going to come in out of the matchup. Underworld Connections is great. It's one of the best cards in the matchup. He's only main decking 3. We'll see 4 after the sideboard. Other things you can see, Banishing Light is great at taking care of most of Boettcher's permanents. The sideboarding can get kind of interesting here because of the presence of all these Rakdos returns for Jared Boettcher. Ben doesn't really have a great defense against that. He's going to board in the Erebos as well, so he has the traditional cards. I'll be interested to see what he does with his Blood Barons in this spot. Typically, they're good in the matchup. Okay, he has Obsidat, though. So he does have 2 Obs, so he can up his Obsidat count. He also can, if he wants to go for a full grind, get this Obsidat and Whip of Erebos combo going. I'm not sure whether that's too grindy or whether it's something he's interested in.
On the other side here, we see 3 Life-Bane Zombies, a Sire of Insanity, Devourer Flesh, a Magma Spray, an Ultimate Price, Hammer of Perforos, a Whip of Erebos, Erebos God of the Dead, a Dreadbore, 3 Duress, and a Rakdos Return. A lot of the same tools here for Boettcher as Friedman. The big one, of course, is the additional Rakdos Return in the sideboard. We know Erebos is going to come in. I imagine the Duresses as well. I could see Dreadbore coming in, assuming that Jared wants more removal to take care of Pack Rat. You know, Life-Bane Zombie not for this particular matchup. And there's the potential for Hammer of Perforos in this matchup. I'll be interested to see if he does bring that in here.
Yeah, I don't feel like it breaks open like the board stalls that this matchup creates. So I'm also interested in it. I'd like to actually point out something going back, whether or not he's going to keep his Mizium Mortars. So this is different in top 8 than it would be in the Swiss. I, for example, just assumed that a black-white mid-range deck would be playing some number of Blood Baron. You know, that's why you play it, right? To beat the mirror. So if I was Jared Boettcher in the Swiss, I would certainly keep my Mizium Mortars. As we see, actually, now that they have each other's deck lists, all of Ben Friedman's black-white finishers at 5 are Obsidats. He's actually not playing the Blood Barons. So I'm not sure whether Jared keeps his Mortars anymore. Those are kind of a silver bullet for Blood Baron. It still could, I guess, in theory, answer a Pack Rat. He needs to make sure he doesn't have 2-mana removal to not get Pack Ratted, but that card lost a huge amount of value.
Yeah, I don't expect, you know, Mizium Mortars to overload. That's also, I don't believe, realistic in this matchup. He worked his way towards 3 red, but if you look how many red sources Boettcher does have in his deck, 4 Blood Crypt, the Mana Confluence, 4 copies of Temple of Malice, and a Temple of Epiphany. We're looking at 4, 8, 9. That's 10 sources, which isn't terrible, but you have to find 3 of those to be able to overload. I don't really think the game is going to be about that, especially after sideboard. You can make an argument for leaving them in just to have a 2-mana removal spell to take care of Pack Rat. We'll see. I know one place that Jared actually gets an edge in this matchup, and we almost saw it come to be there, even though it was a little late to the party, is the fact that he does have Nightfall Spectre, where Ben does have Life-Bane Zombie. So even though he has that little edge, it didn't help him in game number 1. We'll see if it'll help him in these subsequent games. Yeah,
I mean, he does have the edge in the Night Veil Spectres. You're absolutely right. He has a decent edge in these Rakdos' returns. It's certainly something that's relevant. I don't know if it's as important as Ben Friedman's just ability to answer cards like Underworld Connections. This white removal is really good for him here.
Yeah, Ben was able to stop what Jared was doing and then able to convert that to a win with Pack Rat. We saw in turn 2, Ben had Devour Flesh for Jared's Pack Rat. On turn 3, Ben had Banishing Light for the Underworld Connections. We played a couple more turns there. Ben playing a Pack Rat on turn 5 with the ability to activate it, and then he does win the race. Ideally, that's how Ben wants the games to go.
Yeah. So the red division has a lot of things going for it, and I think he has high impact plays like Rakdos' return. One of the biggest things is that Jared still can't answer permanence very well from Ben. You know, for example, Underworld Connections is here to stay when Ben plays it. Erebos doesn't come off the table. And I think that gives Ben the inevitability in the matchup. So Jared has a lot of cards that will help him get that early blowout. You know, if he returns Ben's whole hand, for example, he can top deck that. But I think the pressure is on Jared to win the game a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I feel like he's going to be the aggressor. I feel like he does have some really, really nice tools in the matchup. Again, Nightfall Spectre being the biggest one. That's a huge card that plays a role in the mirror. Now, the chances of that card living, of course, are relatively low, all things considered, as both players do have a lot of removal, especially Friedman. So, you know, how often do you expect Nightfall Spectre to connect? That's a good question. But one thing that we are sure of is that Friedman has to have an answer for the card because it can win the game by itself.
Yeah. So interestingly, that means if Jared gets ahead, say we get this kind of board state where, you know, hand annihilation plus Jared gets Underworld Connections. I feel like in that situation, it's not a sure thing that Jared gets there. I feel like if it happens in reverse, Ben's almost sure to run away with the game unless Jared has a very aggressive start.
Yeah, I think that'll be the case. We'll see, though. Jared was on the play in game number 1. That did not help him. We'll see if he's able to in game number 2. Friedman breaking serve here could play a huge role in this matchup. Again, the winner of this match will play the winner of Alex Bertoncini against Tom Ross. Tom Ross quickly defeating Brad Nelson, while Bertoncini had to beat Chi Ho Yim in 5 very competitive games. So we will turn our attention to that match after this one.
Yeah. Ross made short work of Brad's John Monsters deck. He made it look like the matchup was almost unwinnable for Brad. Now that's not the case, but it certainly seemed like a clinic. Now, Bertoncini has more hate for a mono red deck, but he's gonna have to it'll have to cover a lot of ground to make it a matchup that Bertoncini wants.
Yeah. I think Tom is pretty well positioned in that matchup. You have to imagine coming into this tournament, he knew that Jund Monsters was going to be a thing that a lot of people were interested in doing due to Chris Van Meter's success, as well as just the power level of the deck. The power level is very high. So I imagine that he tuned his boss slide deck to be able to beat this kind of strategy. And while Nelson only had 2 copies of Courser Crew Fix and Bertoncini does have 4, it'll be very important for Alex to draw that card in that particular matchup. We'll see how the events do unfold when we do begin our coverage on that match. But right now, Jared Boettcher only down a game right now. Again, best 3 out of 5 here. So even though he did lose 1 game, doesn't mean it's over. If he loses this one, it just becomes a little bit more difficult at that point.
And you talked about how Boettcher is one of the hottest players right now as far as the streaks he's on. I really liked the matchup between him and Reed. I think those are the 2 players right now who are contending for both the Star City Games Players Championship and the Wizards of the Coast Players Championship at the end of the year. You know, Jared, you see that 28 by his name. It is reasonable that he gets an at-large spot if he doesn't get one this afternoon in our Players Championship. And, you know, Jared definitely in a spot for the Wizards Players Championship, currently locking up Platinum in that tour.
Yeah, he's locked up Platinum over there, and it looks to be a lock for Rookie of the Year, and Rookie of the Year does qualify for the Wizards of the Coast World Championship at the end of the year. So I agree with you. There's a chance that both of those players are playing in the Premier Tournaments in December at the end of the year here. We'll see how things do break as both players going to send it back, take a mulligan here. You do see the sideboards on the screen. Looks like both players are happy with their configurations, obviously, and we'll see if anything changes when they're on the play or on the draw after the second game is over. Don't really think a mulligan favors either player here. You know, again, hands are just going to get shredded apart, and then it comes down to kind of top deck mode.
He keeps saying he's locked up for Rookie of the Year, and I'm like, oh man, we've been there before. It's never locked.
It's really close to being locked. Neil Oliver needs to have something really special happen, as well as a couple other people, and Jared has to have a horrible Pro Tour in Portland. I mean, I don't want to give him, you know, the title before, you know, it's given to him, but he's about as close as you can get.
There have been situations where some guy no one had heard of just won the Pro Tour.
I do know that. Other thing, too, for Neil Oliver, he lost the PTQ in the finals in Las Vegas a little earlier. I think it was last month. He lost in the finals to former coverage reporter for us, Glenn Jones. So Neil was looking to get back on the Pro Tour to maybe steal that Rookie of the Year title away from Boettcher, but he'll have to try to do so another weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
And both players mulliganing down to 6 here. We'll see if they find hands that they like. And again, Boettcher will be on the play this go-around. His splash of red, Friedman's splash of white.
It's kind of funny mull to 6 in this matchup. A lot of times when I watch the match, I already feel like they've mulled to 6 just because they're all thought seizing so many times. So I almost feel like this doesn't change the contour of the matchup at all. Maybe it's more likely that one person just kind of gets knocked out of the game early on.
Boettcher does not look thrilled about his hand. You saw a pretty visible sigh there, and now he's going to send it back for 5.
I don't think he had lands.
I think his only land was a mutable. I saw connections in his hand, but I think his only land may have been mutable. So Ben's going to keep the 6, and Boettcher's going to go down to 5 here. Again, kind of the deck I think that no one wants to play against in this top 8 is what Tom Ross is sporting. And that's actually what we saw in the Standard Open, too.
Nobody could beat it.
No, mono red 6-0 through the elimination rounds of our Standard Open. And none of the games were particularly close either.
No, I wouldn't think so. It might be that it'll be a little bit tougher for Tom Ross if he makes the finals. I was talking with Patrick Sullivan about this. He tends to think that the difference, I said, you know, hey, mono red aggro or mono red sly. He said, well, if you're playing against creatures, mono red sly. If you're playing against removal, mono red aggro. So you'd think that the sly deck has a better chance of getting through something like monsters. It might have a little bit of a tougher time with Underworld Connections, black deck. But even so, I think it's got a good matchup going both ways.
I think Ross has to like his position, being able to make it in the top 8 here. He made the top 8 at our Season 1 Invitational with Infect, but got dispatched by Jesse Hafner playing Rug Delver. Tom even saying that's one of my worst matchups. It doesn't look like there's a worse matchup here for his road to the championship. But again, we're going to see how the events unfold. You see Boettcher on a mulligan to 5 here. He doesn't look thrilled, but he is going to keep Temple of Malice will be his first play. Lose the top card on top.
Well, at least he's going to hit his second land if he's keeping it on top, so he's going to get to play.
I imagine that is the case. Friedman going to play a Temple of Silence, leaves it on top, pass it back over to Boettcher, takes the swamp right off the top of the deck, puts it right into play. You see Friedman with the duress. He wants to see what's going on, and we will. There's a Dreadboard, Devour Flesh, a Sire of Insanity, and a Gray Merchant. So some cheap cards and some real expensive ones.
You can see why Jared was not happy with this hand. Basically, he either, like, there's no good draw for this hand. So you're sad that you don't have any 3-drops and that you don't have any lands. So if you draw lands every turn, that's cool, except that means your first play of the game is turn 5 Gray Merchant, which is really weak. If you draw your 3-drops, that's also cool, but that means you're not going to ever have mana to play those end spells, so it's like you're on a mulligan to 3 instead of 5. So there's no particularly good draw for him.
Yeah, it's not the best situation. What it's going to take is consecutive draws to get him back into the game. You see Friedman's going to play a 3rd land and Underworld Connections. Pretty good start there for Ben.
Yeah, and while Jared's playing these lands, Ben is going to curve Underworld Connections and Erebos onto the table. Remember we said before, the Black-Red Devotion can't actually answer those cards. So when they come down for Ben, what that means is Jared's going to have to start going aggro and have pressure, but there's not much pressure in his hand right now.
Yeah, Jared will attack there for 2 with the Mutavault. Put Friedman down to 18. Friedman's going to go down to 17 now after that Connections activation. Picks up a copy of Elspeth. Will play a Godless Shrine tapped. There is a Pack Rat before passing the turn back over to Boettcher, who will take a draw here. Again, I think one of Boettcher's plans in this situation, outside of crossing his fingers, is hoping he just kind of runs off 2 lands, is able to resolve his Sire of Insanity, and hopefully that'll get the job done, as there's a Devour Flesh to take care of the rat, and Boettcher, I think, has a rat of his own, and he does. So maybe this can provide something, as Friedman will draw a card.
Now, Friedman's not going to let that happen. That's going to get killed. The bigger problem which Boettcher has is if he goes for a traditional aggro, say like Desecration Demons, cards that are not Pack Rat, well, Friedman's going to have Erebos to draw extra cards, and he actually has a whip of Erebos in his hand, which means his life total is going to be really hard to attack directly. You're going to have to attack his board position. Pack Rat is the way to do it. I do like that he has that in play. I don't think Ben's going to let him keep it. Pack Rat's like one of the few ways this hand of Ben's can lose.
Yeah, Ben's looking at Erebos right now along with its whip. He has a Hero's Downfall to take care of the Pack Rat, but he's kind of second-guessing himself maybe here, or maybe it's just more important for him to drop Erebos on the table and get to work that way. He knows that Boettcher has a Gray Merchant that wouldn't be good. You know, if Erebos is in play, it's obviously not very good. So, again, we'll see what Friedman wants to do. He's certainly thinking about maybe playing Erebos or the whip, as opposed to casting Hero's Downfall right now.
I mean, here's the thing. If you play Erebos, now you have Erebos in play. Jared can never get that off the battlefield. You have Underworld Connections. Jared can never get that off the battlefield. Your next play would be Whip of Erebos. As long as Jared does not duress it this turn, he never gets that off the battlefield. So you have a permanent 5/7 lifelink indestructible that's never going away. Like, talk about a powerful position.
5th land there for Boettcher, allows him to play Gray Merchant of Asphodel. He takes 2 from the Blood Crypt, gains 2 back from the Gray Merchant, but he does drain Friedman of 2 life. Friedman draws a copy of Devour Flesh. See where he wants to start this turn. Again, it's very realistic, I think, for Sire of Insanity to actually make this a game. I'm not saying it's going to steal the game, but it allows it to become a game.
And I don't think Ben Friedman's respecting the Sire here enough. I mean, we'll see if he plays Pack Rat. Pack Rat could get it, but this is why I think Ben would traditionally like to have an Erebos, and if he gets Erebos and Whip in play, I don't think it matters what Jared does. But he's giving Jared an opportunity to top deck that land and sire all his cards.
Yeah, I think you know, and I agree with you. He's given the opportunity for that to happen, but I think that Pack Rat with Underworld Connections in play, the fact that he'll be drawing 2 cards a turn, I think that combination of cards will be too hard for Jared to overcome. It's not a guarantee, of course, and we'll see if Boettcher even draws his 6th land, which it doesn't look like he did. We'll see if maybe it's a Connections, maybe a Nightfell Spectre, and it is a Spectre, so that's exactly what he has found for the turn.
Yeah. Ben leaving up enough mana to make another Pack Rat in case things go awry. He does know about Sire of Insanity, so he knows that that last card's not a kill spell. He can take down the Pack Rat mana.
Looks like a Devour Flesh is going to be cast here, giving Boettcher the option, of course, activate Mutavault, but I think right now for Boettcher, it's, hey, I need to get to 6th land, so I can't afford to lose my Mutavault.
Yeah, rather than get another rat token, Ben opts for another card in the Devour Flesh. He draws off Underworld Connections. And now you see Demon, Whip, Obsidat, Erebos, Elspeth, just a ton of heavy hitters.
He's found the expensive half of his deck. Now, of course, all these cards are really good, but he doesn't want, I think, all of these cards in his hand at the same time. You know, he'd like some cheap things and some lands, you know, be able to play multiple spells in one turn, because now he has to figure out how he wants to sequence his cards. You know, do I play Obsidat this turn with the potential to lose everything? If that's the case, am I okay with losing everything? Do I play Erebos? Do I play Whip? You know, which way do I go? I think that Ben has the tools to win the game.
I think Whip is the safest play, because if he plays Whip, Obsidat conveniently goes to the graveyard. So
sure,
even if Jared top decks that land, well, Whip plus Obsidat will be in play, and you'll be in play forever and gaining tons of life.
You saw an activation of the Underworld Connections. It draws a Mutavault. Mutavault comes right into play. Arguably the best land that Ben could find that turn, and now he's going to play an Obsidat. He will, excuse me, gain 2 up to 15 and drain 2 from Boettcher. Obsidat's going to go hiding, and now Boettcher is going to untap. He's in some trouble here as he does draw a card. We'll see if he wants to attack, and he will. So Friedman's going to go back down to 13. Top card is a Swamp.
Well, he has the land for that Sire now. Depends on how good the card he drew was.
Yeah, how good does he think Sire is right now, too? In this situation, you see Ben's ready to discard his hand. He says, yeah, if you want to, you can. That's cool with me. The question is, does Boettcher have a choice? Does he have to play Sire and then hope the top deck better? There's a Hero's Downfall in his hand right now as well. That's the card he drew for the turn.
It's interesting because normally you'd want to keep that Downfall for the Obsidat. Right now there's the problem that if you let Ben untap, he's going to make a whip, and then nothing deals with Obsidat. So I don't think Sire is good for Boettcher, but I really don't feel like, I feel like not Sire is even worse.
Yeah, you know, Sire, takes care of the whip that's in the hand along with all the other resources, and Boettcher just decides to pass the turn back and represent Hero's Downfall at this point. So doesn't think that this is the best spot to cast Sire of Insanity, and it's tough to say. You make your opponent discard their hand, but then you're facing down an Obsidat, you're facing down a Pack Rat, lands that are in play, a Mutavault, and Underworld Connections that can draw multiple cards. It's no easy decision to be had there for Jared Boettcher. And he just elects to pass the turn back over to Friedman, who, again, we're going to see which one of these expensive spells he wants to deploy now.
I'm still waiting for Friedman to go whip Obsidat. That's just an interaction that I'm not sure Jared can answer.
Well, there's whip finally.
Like Jared can't remove... He doesn't have any shatter effects despite the fact he's playing red, so he can't remove that whip. He can't remove the Obsidat because the whip will keep it alive.
Yep.
This is... I don't know how he wins through this.
This might be the old hard lock. There's a Hero's Downfall to target that. This is a momentary reprieve.
The way he wins through it is pack-ratting through it, which that's not real right now. Not to mention if you guys pack rats big enough, then Ben could just Elspeth them.
Yeah, that's true too. Assuming Ben gets to continue to keep his hand, as Boettcher's going to untap these 3 lands and Nightveil Spectre. Looks like he may have drawn a copy of Erebos, which is interesting here. Shutting off the lifelink from the whip as well as the Obsidat. So there's a Swamp. Man, this is no easy game for Jared Boettcher to win. He's going to need help with the Nightveil Spectre along with his draw step and some things to go really right for him. He's certainly going to give it his best shot to try to figure out what he can do. He's going to play the land off of Nightveil Spectre to start. And there you do see Erebos, which is almost active right now too. So we could have maybe a racing situation. Again, I think this is going to be a really hard game to win, but he's not out of it yet.
Yeah, Erebos was as good of a draw as anything, actually. A pretty good draw for Boettcher. The question is, are any draws good enough? I mean, it just seems like Ben does have the higher power level cards, and he's really doing a good job of establishing inevitability right now.
Yeah, but is he deploying these cards in the right order? That's the question. Again, we don't argue the power level. I think Ben has the cards to win the game. He's got Elspeth, he's got Desecration Demon in his hand, Obsidat coming in and out, Pack Rat in play, Connections in play, Whip in play. He has the cards to win. It's just, does he deploy them in the correct order to get the job done? And can he overcome maybe some of Boettcher's great top decks, with his own deck as well as Friedman's?
Yeah, well, the best thing that Erebos has done for Boettcher is it has turned off Ben's life game. If Ben was still gaining life with Obsidat and Whip, I don't think Jared would be able to answer just Ben tapping 4 and whipping back Obsidat. As it is right now, that's still a pretty strong play, but with Jared at 20 and Ben at 12, it's not as appealing, and you kind of see that because for the turn, Ben started making rats, and I think that's an indication that Ben's slightly uncomfortable with where this is. He's still in command, but he sees that there could be a chink in the armor.
Looks like we're tapping some mana here. Going to add another Pack Rat to the table. The follow-up maybe a Desecration Demon. It's actually just going to be a Whip back Erebos. So this is going to come in. There will be a little drain, but no gain for Friedman. So Boettcher's going to go down to 18. And now this is going to be an attack. So in for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Boettcher's going to go down to 7.
And remember that with the Whip and Obsidat triggers, the Whip's a delayed effect, whereas Obsidat's a triggered effect, which means that Obsidat exiles to himself before he exiles to Whip. So that Obsidat's just alive again. It's here to stay.
It's not going anywhere. I wonder if Boettcher has any interest in blocking. I believe he does, and then he's going to activate Mutavault here. So Boettcher's going to take 2, it looks like, to block something to take a little bit less damage.
Yeah, he soaks up 2 damage. He then pays 2 to draw a card. So he still does take 11 for the turn, I believe.
So he's going to go down to 10, take a draw. See if he can find a way to maybe turn on Erebos.
Yeah, I mean, any winning plan he has should probably start with turning on Erebos. It's, like I said, still not a good situation. I mean, Ben has a pack rat going. There's 3 pack rats. That usually wins a mirror.
The best way I think the best thing to find here is, I mean, Gray Merchant seems like it was the best draw for Jared, if he can find one. It turns on Erebos, it drains, it gains for him. And I think that might be the card that he was looking for here. You see, it's kind of Frodo's brow here. It looks like he may be trying to figure something out. Nightfall Spectre, again, is not going to reveal a Gray Merchant from Ben's deck. That's not an option, since he doesn't have those. Looks like he's just going to attack here with Nightfall Spectre. That's going to reveal a Duress. One of the worst cards Jared can find in this situation. He's not looking for discard anymore.
Well, I think Jared's going to play Sire of Insanity this turn. There's a chance, so Duress not really doing much. He's going to take one shot at Erebos, digging for what I have to imagine is another shot at Gray Merchant.
Yeah, that's what I think, too. He went down to 8 to do so. Yep, and he knows he's beat, so he's going to concede this one as well. Ben Friedman's going to win game number 2 here over Jared Boettcher. Black-white mid-range, 1 game away from moving on to the finals.
Ben Friedman 8-0'd standard with this deck. Remember, Ben didn't have any buys going into this tournament. Most of these other players in the rankings got a buy, and those buys took place during standard. So Ben is 8-0 with 8 rounds played in standard right now.
He's very happy with this configuration of his deck. We have seen players have success with black-white mid-range before, of course. I mean, this isn't a new deck to the scene. This is a Grand Prix winning deck. But again, it's, you know, people kind of dabble. Do they want to have the green splash like Andrew Tendrum did in Cincinnati when he won? Do you want to have the red splash like Boettcher's having right now? Or do you want to have the white splash like Friedman's having? Or do you just want to be traditional? Like we saw with Owen Turtenwald in our Standard Open before he was dispatched in the semifinals by Mono Red. I think it's really player to player and what you're comfortable with. And obviously Ben Friedman is very comfortable splashing these white cards.
Yeah, and I think it's a meta call at the end of the day. Black-white mid-range, when you're playing these mirrors, just looks so powerful. When you look at like Jared's style deck, he looked great against Reed's control deck. And then you look at Owen's style black deck, that one generally tends to be better against aggro. He still was taken down by Mono Red, but he gave it, I think, the best fight of the people we saw playing against it.
Yeah, you know, also part of the reason I think Owen lost that match is, you know, we have seen him in the past have access to Freaka's Cure and other things that are better against hyper-aggressive decks, but he didn't have access to any of those cards this weekend. You know, kind of assuming that a lot of people aren't playing that kind of strategy, and I think that that's a pretty fair assumption. Now, if you do get paired against it without having Freaka's Cure or Drown in Sorrow, well, you're in for a world of trouble, as Turtenwald was in the semifinals. But if you're able to fade it, you know, your deck looks like it's lined up pretty well. Now, this is part of the reason I think that Tom Ross is having such a great tournament, is because people probably weren't prepared to beat this style of deck, straight up.
We have been seeing this for this week and last week. So last week, Ross Miriam took down standard playing mono blue. That's another deck where Farika's Cure is really strong. These are all these aggressive strategies. Normally in this situation, players play cards like Farika's Cure. Like the mid-range has definitely become a bigger part of the metagame. We see a lot of players playing Courser of Krufik decks with Sylvan Caryatid. So as these mid-range decks have gotten more popular, the mono-black players have wanted to stop playing Farika's Cure, start playing more Doomblades, maybe start playing more ways to deal with Planeswalkers. As you see from Jared, more Rakdos' return, and that has really come at the expense of their matchup against one-drop decks. You know, Mono Blue winning last week, Mono Red winning this week, maybe even Mono Red winning the Invitational.
That'll be compelling to watch. We'll see if Boettcher can actually tie things up here. You know, not a great first game. In the second game, he mulliganed to 5. He put up a fight there, but Friedman just overpowered him with connections and Pack Rat, Whip, and Obsidian. So Boettcher looking to, you know, keep 7 cards and actually, you know, make your opponent discard and do what, you know, Black Devotion does, which honestly he hasn't really done in either of these first 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, Jared's been going for the game plan. Ben's had a lot of answers, as we've seen. I mean, that second game didn't really happen. Jared mulliganed. Ben was able to just basically be the guy with the underworld connections. That, to me, felt like more of a standard mono-black mirror. Yeah. Where it's like one player gets to draw extra cards, he uses extra cards to win the game.
Well, you can see these 2 players are certainly lighthearted about the action that's taking place, even though there is a lot on the line here. Jared has played definitely in some high-leverage situations over the past 8 months, given his run towards that Rookie of the Year crown. And Ben Friedman is no slouch either. He's been in situations like this before. But you know, when the cards are in each player's hands and they're trying to figure out how to navigate their ways to victory, it's all business then.
All right. What do you see going for this match? Yeah, Jared's going to have an uphill climb, unlike when we saw Tom Ross and Brad Nelson, where it felt almost insurmountable. You know, Brad would have to win 2 times on the draw against Tom Ross. We thought that was almost impossible.
That seems very hard.
I think Jared can come back here. Like, yeah, Ben's favored in this matchup, but mono-black mirrors are, like, how favored can you get in this mirror? You know, Ben may be a 60-40, but Jared has a kicking chance every time. And I don't think play versus draw matters too much in this matchup.
I don't think it matters a ton, no.
Yeah, I mean, it always matters, but when you put it like, it certainly is no Tom Ross, Brad Nelson level of mattering.
Yeah, that's for sure. Again, Jared Boettcher going to be on the play here. He's a 2 seed, and Ben Friedman has cracked serve twice without much difficulty.
Yeah, definitely not. Ben is the lowest seed left in the tournament. The other seeds 1, 2, and 4 all winning. So Ben will be on the draw in game 1 for the remainder of the top 8 if he makes it to the finals.
Boettcher going to take a look at an opener. And looks like he has kept his hand pretty quickly here. So we're underway in game number 3. A Blood Crypt going to come into play tapped. Goblet Shrine here for Friedman. Boettcher on his second turn. We'll see what he does have. Is it a discard spell? Perhaps a Pack Rat? Just going to be a Blood Crypt tapped. Over to Friedman we go, who draws a copy of Whip of Erebos. A Swamp. Maybe the first test card? No. So no action, no discard, no nothing on the first couple turns of the game. Boettcher with a Night Veil Spectre. This will be the first test here for Friedman. See if he does have an answer. Looks like he picked up a copy of Mutavault. Taking a look through that hand. Is this maybe a Connections? It's a Read the Bones. So it looks like Boettcher's going to get to hit here as Friedman does set up for further turns down the road.
Yeah, I mean, Jared's fine with this kind of keep. Both players kept the hands with a lot of threats, but not a lot of disruption. When I'm on the play, I really like those kind of hands in this mirror match. It's a little bit of a liability on the draw, because as we see here, Jared's going to start pulling ahead. Next turn, he's going to get to hit with Night Veil. He's going to get to play Underworld Connections and activate it. And while Ben's deck certainly can produce answers to those cards, he can only usually play 1 a turn. So as long as Jared can keep, making threats, Ben will still be 1 threat behind for a while.
Friedman picks up a copy of... Friedman's going to have to discard here in just a moment, of course, but Obsidat and Banish Light are the cards that he did pick up. It's the old divination when you keep your 7, and then, of course, that's your first spell for the turn. So Friedman will have to discard in just a moment, of course.
That's always a tragedy when you have to turn 3 divination on the draw. You just wish you had something you could play. You don't want to discard anything.
Yeah, he's going to discard an Obsidat. That'll be there for now. You see Ben kind of giving a wink. I can bring it back later, though, with the Whip. So Boettcher will take a draw here. It's a Swamp. He'll start by getting in for 2. That's a Temple of Silence, as Friedman's going to go down to 16. And we'll see if that's the land Jared wants to play now, or would he rather play an untapped one? Because we know he has a Swamp in his hand, and it looks like he does want to play an untapped one for this Underworld Connection, so he can get himself a card. A really, really nice start here for Boettcher, as Friedman will draw Plains for the turn. Yeah,
Jared's certainly ahead. The question is if he can use the fact that he's ahead to stay farther ahead. Remember, Ben's deck can answer what Jared's doing. It also can try to overpower it. And this is a different tactic that Ben's taking. Rather than fighting over Underworld Connections and Night Veils, which is what he's normally been doing, he's going to try to ignore them and just beat them with the Whip Obsidat combo.
It's a pretty good combo, and we'll see if Boettcher can beat it here. And see, he's going to draw a card. There's a Hero's Downfall hanging out over there. You see a Temple of Malice as well. You saw him activate the Underworld Connections to draw a Dress, but Dress might not be important at this point in the game. He also has 2 copies of Grey Merchant in his hand, so he's going to start by serving in for 2. Friedman's going to go down to 14. That's a Godless Shrine. Was Boettcher looking for a land that could come into play untapped? We're going to find out in just a moment.
It's going to be hard for Boettcher to go late here, because this is a gain of 7 each turn from Ben Friedman. I don't know if Jared can actually race through that. That's puts a pretty good big dent in his Grey Merchant strategy. So then you think, how do they normally stop them from gaining life? Well, Erebos is a great way to do it, but you know that Ben plays, Banishing Lights, things that answer that. So Jared can either duress away the Banishing Lights, or, and this is a pretty sweet play, if he plays enough white mana from Ben, maybe he can hit some of these answers off Ben's deck to answer Ben's own cards.
Desecration Demon, double Underworld Connections, Banishing Light, and Elspeth Sun's Champion, along with the Plains, is what Boettcher's looking at from this duress. So the big question now is, which card do you want to take? Elspeth is certainly appealing simply because it's Elspeth. You've got Banishing Light, which can be the answer to Underworld Connections or Night Veil Spectre. Be surprised if he takes either one of these connections at this point, simply because Ben has a redundant copy, and he will go with the Oblivion Ring effect in Banishing Light. Boettcher also going to just play a land, pass the turn back. This turn looks like, to me, Matthias, assuming that Friedman does whip the Obsidat back into play, is going to Hero's Downfall that, activate connections, and keep moving forward.
Yeah, he's going to have to keep moving forward. I really like that he took Banishing Light. Banishing Light is the card that slows him down. And because even though he has connections and Night Veil, I'm not sure that Boettcher has the late game. So he needs to play with a pretty high velocity. He needs to stay ahead, taking Banish. So he wants to stop those speed bumps that Ben has. Also, and I really don't want to underrate, I think it's pretty important that if he draws that Erebos, that the Erebos not get answered.
Yeah, I definitely do agree with you there. There's an Underworld Connections activation. It's a duress yet again. Boettcher going to untap here. I like his position in this game. There's a Dreadbore.
Whew. I mean, you can also not take Elspeth because you can just draw another duress for it the next turn. Jared's pulling pretty far ahead now.
This is going to be an attack for 2. Friedman going to go down to 14. Take a look. It's a swamp. See what land Boettcher wants to play. He wants to go with the lands going to come into play on tap. So you see the 2 lands that produce white mana underneath the Nightveil Spectre. Temple of Silence, one that will always come into play tapped. And of course, Gobbler Shrine, one that Boettcher could pay 2 to put into play on tap. But he's got no interest in those right now. Looks like his interest is in casting a duress to see exactly what Friedman does have. The only card that Friedman did add to his hand, I believe, is that swamp, as he played a Plains last turn. So still 2 Underworld connections. Elspeth's going to bite the dust, and there's a Desecration Demon.
Yeah,
and now there is the Grey Merchant.
Boettcher in no interest to cast Ben's cards. He could have shocked there for Godless Shrine, which would have given the opportunity to, in theory, cast a white card if Nightveil chops it. But he's just going to go ahead for the simple lands. And you see how he's definitely embracing his aggressive role right now when he casts Grey Merchant there and doesn't tap Underworld for a card.
Yeah. And Ben is a little bit behind right now. You saw Ben on last turn try to bring back Obsidian, and Hero's Downfall took care of that. Sure, Ben gained 2 and drained Boettcher 2, but if that's Ben's turn again, all right, he'll go up to 9, he'll attack, he'll go up to 14. And yeah, Obsidian will come back a little bit later, but he might be a little bit far behind now. This is a card, however, that can catch him up in Pack Rat. And Boettcher says, I'm going to show you a copy of Grey Merchant, even though I'm not entirely convinced that, well, I suppose that is going to get it done. If he said go, it gets it done. You know, because I think he showed it to him after he said go, because there was the opportunity for him to whip back Obsidian, but if he said go, then that's going to do it. And I imagine that's the case. So Jared Boettcher is going to win game number 3 here. Black-Red Devotion catching back up against Black-White mid-range.
Yeah, that was a situation, and it was interesting. Ben employed a different tactic there. Ben, rather than the traditional mono-black matchup, like in a normal mono-black mirror, I don't think you can really keep a hand that doesn't have, on the draw, that doesn't have a Thoughtseize in it, doesn't have a Duress in it, doesn't have an answer to connections. You know, you're going to get connections or Nightveiled out of the game way too easily in a normal mono-black mirror. But Ben went on a different tactic. He's playing black-white, so he figured, maybe I'll just play a different game. Maybe I'll just overpower you before you can win. He came pretty close to doing that, but I think he probably needed 1 disruption spell if he wanted to go that route.
Shows you just the power of Grey Merchant of Asphodel, the ability to close out a game with that card. Both players are going to go back to the drawing board here, it looks like, on the sideboarding. So we will take a moment to mention SCG Game Night here for you guys. If you missed the announcement on Friday, I know a lot of people are excited about this, coming September to your game store if you'd like.
Yeah, at any participating sports store, we're going to have StarCityGames.com's Game Night. This just takes place in addition to whatever tournament your store wants to run. It can be a fun night to play Magic and win some foils, win some pins. These will be pins and foils exclusive to SCG Game Night. And all you have to do is talk to your store, and the event will become a Star City Games Game Night.
Yeah, not too tough. 2 pins, 8 foil tokens per week. New pins and foils each month. Again, this is coming in September every Wednesday. If you need more information, StarCityGames.com/game night or game night at StarCityGames.com for your emails. I know everyone's excited about it. I am too. And again, any players out there that want to have this at your local store, bug your TO. As we will turn our attention back to this match here very quickly. Jared Boettcher does win game number 3, which means finally Ben Friedman gets to go first. I don't know if that matters that much, but Ben's got to feel pretty good about finally getting to go first here.
I mean, it does matter. We saw last game, Jared was able to pull ahead with that turn 3 Nightveil, turn 4 Underworld draw card. Ben doesn't have a Nightveil, but he does have a turn 3 Underworld connections, and if he gets that, like, he's going to force Jared to probably keep a hand with a Duress or a Thoughtseize in it, which will be good for him. The play of draw, like I said, isn't all that important in the matchup. Really, what cards they have matters more.
Again, we saw Boettcher bring in Sire of Insanity in one of the games. Also caught Hammer of Perforos in one of the games as well. You have to imagine he has his whip. We know he has his Erebos. May or may not have brought in that Dreadbore for additional removal. 3 Duress, we know he's got those in there. Might have that Rakdos' Return. I imagine that's probably the case. On Ben's side, he has a lot of great tools as well for this matchup. He's definitely got some more expensive tools, as we saw in game number 2. Erebos, Obsidian, Whip, things like that. Elspeth's in his deck as well. He's got the high-end cards, which also, in theory, means he has the more powerful cards. He just needs to be able to cast them in time, which he was certainly not able to do that game.
Yeah, he died with 6 cards in his hand, I believe.
Yep.
You know, full grip. Interesting. I like how Jared's sideboarding. So he brought in Hammer, and I wasn't convinced at first how good Hammer would be here, just because I wasn't sure it could actually overpower what Ben's doing. But he is going for some low-end threats. Interestingly enough, I'm not sure he kept his Rakdos' returns in the matchup, which could make sense. They're traditionally good against control decks, but these decks tend to tear apart each other's hands enough that I'm not actually sure that he'll, like, by the time he Rakdos returns in this matchup, it may already be too late.
Yeah, I think that would be the case too. If he had some Planeswalkers to fire off with, I think it would be good, but I don't think the situation is going to present itself where, you know, you can kind of set up a Rakdos' return or fire off a Rakdos' return out of nowhere that the opponent doesn't know about. The power level of the card is quite high, of course, but I'm not sure if this is the ideal place for this card in this matchup, but we'll see. We have another game to play. He hasn't drawn one yet, but we'll see if he does find one here. You see Boettcher and Friedman having a pretty good time. They are pretty good friends, playing on the Pro Tour along with the Open Series together. Gonna see which one of them can make it to the finals here. However, Brent Friedman up 2-1, and he will be on the play here for game number 4.
Yeah, no clean sweep this time for Ben. Jared did manage to get on the board with game 3, but now he's gonna be on the draw for the rest of the match. As we said, not too bad, but we'll see whether or not Ben can have one of these draws where he just overpowers him once again with basically his card quality.
Now the Shrine to begin things here for Friedman. Boettcher gonna fire off a turn 1 Thoughtseize. So Friedman gonna show a hand of Pack Rat, Read the Bones, Bile, Blight, Desecration Demon, and 2 other lands and swamps.
This hand's pretty beatable for Jared, and he's got to be happy with staring this down. If he doesn't already have an answer to Pack Rat, he can take Pack Rat. Otherwise, he can take Read the Bones and leave Ben with a pretty answerable set of cards. We do know that Jared has an Underworld Connections and the lands to cast it in his hand. I don't know if he has the kill spell for Pack Rat. We'll see based on what he takes.
Yeah, it'll be pretty telling. If he takes Pack Rat, then he doesn't. And it looks like he has a Devour Flesh in his hand and another Thoughtseize and a Pack Rat of his own. His hand looks quite good, but he wants to make sure he takes the right card here because that will sculpt how the rest of this game does go.
It's probably between Bioblight and Read the Bones. If he could try to take Bioblight and Pack Rat out his opponent, but then again, he's on the draw, so he probably has to spend turn 2 killing his opponent's Pack Rat. I like taking Read the Bones here. I think in the end, the value is the best way to go, especially when you have Ben covered on all bases for the time being.
Friedman will drop the Pack Rat into play. This is Devour Flesh to make that go away. So Friedman did draw a copy of Pack Rat for his turn, however. Picks up a Erebos this turn. Now there is a Pack Rat. So Friedman's hoping that Boettcher does not have the answer. You see the Dreadbore, I think there's also a Blood Crypt there as well. So I think he is in the clear, and Boettcher's going to take 2, so he certainly is in the clear now.
Yeah, a good set of plays here. You may have seen traditionally Boettcher just Underworld Connections there, but because Ben played that Pack Rat, he's going to get to Dreadbore the Pack Rat, and now Thoughtseize that Erebos before it gets down.
Yeah, it's interesting if the decision will be Erebos or Desecration Demon here. I'm not sure if Jared has another removal spell to take care of the demon, so he might be scared of that card. So, and he's actually giving this some thought. I think in most circumstances, you just take Erebos and you move about your day, but given that his hand might be removal light, or he might not have a removal spell at all, he might say, I have to take the 6/6. I'm already at 14. I can't afford to take 1 or 2 hits from that card.
Yeah, he does have Underworld Connections in play, but you're right, he certainly doesn't have a kill spell for that demon. He would like to just Connections out this game, but he doesn't have the 4th land either. So I think he's priced into taking this demon.
And he doesn't. We'll see if Ben top decks the land to be able to put, the Erebos into play. It's a big draw, and there it is. So the demon would have hit play if he didn't take that. So either way, a 4-drop in play here for Ben Friedman in Erebos, God of the Dead. Last card in his hand is a Bioblight. Boettcher going to cast a Thoughtseize. So there goes that Bioblight. Ben is cardless. Boettcher going to follow up with a Pack Rat, and it looks like he wants to get aggressive.
Yeah, Jared had 2 lines there. He could have gone Underworld Connections, tap, and tried to fight Erebos on the card advantage front, or he could Thoughtseize the Bioblight and try to Pack Rat out Ben. He opted for the Pack Rat. We'll see how well that works now.
There's a Connections for Friedman. He's going to activate this right now, hoping to maybe draw a land. He picked up a copy of Elspeth. So now it's time for Boettcher to get aggressive and try to get this thing over with before Ben's able to take over on the card advantage front. Boettcher does have Underworld Connections plus Swamp. Actually, those are the 2 cards in his hand. It looks like he just wants to put them both into play on top of each other. And he's considering the option here on if he wants to do that versus making a Pack Rat and which way he's supposed to go.
Well, last turn I was going to say he was just going to Pack Rat for the rest of the game based on how he played it, and I think that is true. He could play Connections, but he can't afford to lose a turn here, especially with Ben threatening to get that Erebos online rather quickly. So he's just going to be Pack Ratting. Remember, making a Pack Rat every turn is actually just like just 2 more turns before it's lethal.
You got an activation there of Underworld Connections. Friedman's down to 17. Does play a land. He also has land plus Elspeth in his hand and the necessary white mana to cast it. So we could see the Sun's Champion come into play next turn. Erebos might get activated here as well. But 2 life is a whole lot more than 1, though, so that's a little bit dangerous. But it looks like Friedman's going to take the risk, and he is. Maybe.
Yeah, well, the Pack Rat clock goes from 6 to lethal. So it's not actually costing him a turn right now. It does mean that if he gets the airboast active, there could be some difficult math where that ended up costing him a turn. It's hard to count that down the road, though. There's a lot of variables involved. On the board, this did not cost Ben a turn.
Boettcher draws a Blood Crypt. It looks like he wants to put that into play simply because I think the sweet spot here for Jared is to get to 5 mana in case he top decks a Gray Merchant. Lands past that I don't think matter at this point, so he's just going to discard the Blood Crypt and get in here for 6 points of damage. Friedman's going to go down to 9. He'll draw a card. It's a copy of Temple of Silence, and now here comes Elspeth, Sun's Champion. So 3 soldier tokens are going to come into play. We'll have a 5 on that Elspeth right now. See if Boettcher can work his way through this. The interesting thing about this is there's a copy of Rakdos' Return. He doesn't want to make those pack rats into 4 toughness creatures, because then Elspeth will take care of them.
This is where it's hard for Pagrat to deal with Elspeth. She actually matches up just really nicely with him. She can, if he leaves them all at 3s, she chumps them all day. If he brings them to 4s, then she kills them. What he can do is he can swing, take care of all the tokens, then on end step make a 4th pack rat, untap, swing, make a 5th pack rat, and presumably kill Elspeth or get her low enough that she cannot minus to kill the rats.
See Boettcher with a land plus Rakdos' Return in his hand. He's trying to figure out how he's supposed to use these cards. Am I supposed to play a plan and Rakdos' Return something for 3, either you or Elspeth? Or am I supposed to do the play that you kind of mentioned, which is let's just slow down so I can make a 4th pack rat?
I think he needs to answer Elspeth with rats.
The draw here for Friedman is another land. He's going to activate Underworld Connections very quickly. Go down to 8. Let's see what the draw is here. It's a Thoughtseize. Not sure if Ben has any interest in casting that card in this situation, though he might, as he puts the top card to the bottom, if he senses maybe a little bit of strength here from Boettcher.
It's one of the few spots where you could cast Thoughtseize. If Boettcher has a spell in his hand, he actually has to let it get Thoughtseized. He can't discard it to pack rat. So kind of an interesting situation where Thoughtseize is live. I don't know if Ben wants to pay 2 life for it.
And then again, if this is the case, you know, I think he would rather Thoughtseize first before activating Elspeth, but he doesn't. So now Boettcher's going to discard to make a rat. So 4 4/4s in the house. Boettcher going to untap. It's time to take a draw. And I want to see where he's going to go with these rats. He's coming into the red zone very quickly, so your blocks are going to take place right there. He's going to go towards Elspeth, and I think he probably just wants to finish this off with Rakdos' Return. You see he's going to tap 4 mana, maybe.
Finishing off Elspeth seems pretty good right here. I'd be surprised if he doesn't make the play. His main concern, so now that he has pack rat at the board, his main concern is Ben dropping another Elspeth.
He's just going to go with Night Veil Spectre before passing the turn back.
I like the play. So the one card that gets him is another Elspeth right now from Ben. And this Night Veil Spectre plays around, is the best, playing Night Veil Spectre is the best thing you can do on a board where Ben has the answer to your rats.
I'm inclined to agree.
I think that's one of the things where you see the skill of these players. Like, that's not an obvious play. When you have 4 rats on a play, you'd be like, oh yeah, time for Night Veil Spectre. You know, you'd be generally be inclined to like, yeah, 2, finish off the Planeswalker. But I like how Jared's played it.
You saw an Erebos activation along with an Underworld Connections activation and a draw for the turn. So Friedman's seen a couple new cards here, but none of them are an Elspeth. Obsidat hiding out in the grip. We know about the Thoughtseize over there. But do any of these cards help him in this situation? I don't think the answer is yes.
I don't think he has any outs. Even if he goes ahead and draws another Elspeth and kills the rat tokens, he's dead to a land from Boettcher. He can swing at Ben for 2 and Rakdos return him for 3. This is a tough spot for Friedman.
Ben going to play a land for the turn. Slides over those lands. Looks like it's time for Obsidat to come to play, and it will. So Friedman's going to go up to 7. Boettcher's going to go down to 10. 3 soldiers are going to come into play as Elspeth takes on up. So Friedman does have 4 blockers here. Boettcher looking, actually, Friedman, yeah, it does have 5 blockers. I take that back. Erebos is active, even though it hasn't moved.
Ben did a pretty big favor. He put down the tokens and he slid that Erebos over towards the tokens. I mean, I think Boettcher sees it, but
well, player of his caliber certainly sees it. But the Underworld Connections plus Obsidat means that Erebos is on, and now this game got real hard.
Well, it is enough blockers that Jared can't kill him right now. I mean, he's close to killing him. This Night Veil Spectre probably has to swing at Elspeth to keep her from massacring some rats, or he's gonna have to Rakdos return her. But
I think a game that Boettcher felt like he was maybe a turn away from winning, he no longer is.
Yeah, he is not winning it yet. That doesn't mean he's not going to win it. He could, it's really a tough spot. So he could swing this Night Veil Spectre at Ben, put Ben to 5. I think that's what he's gonna do. Okay, this is a great line. He is baiting Ben to kill these rat tokens. So he's going to try to hit him for once, and then he's going to try to hit him again and return him. And hope that Ben doesn't have any more life gain.
Duress is the card that Boettcher found. However, in order for this play to work, I think Boettcher needs a land.
Yeah, I don't know what the other... I mean, we don't know what his draw for the turn was.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a land. Maybe he was hoping to hit a land off that Duress.
Certainly possible. Friedman has some big draws to get him back into this, too. A card like Whip of Erebos would be huge.
Oh, yeah. I don't think Jared could beat that.
Boettcher. It was a swamp. This is a Rakdos' return. And I think we're redirecting.
Yeah.
And we are. So there goes Elspeth, and Friedman's going to have to discard some cards.
So he had some options, and I think this is better than the swing for 2 Rakdos return next turn play, because that play loses to a lot of things. It loses to a hero's downfall.
Which is Friedman's last card.
Okay, so yes.
So yeah, this is a little bit safer, even though I'm sure that's not the way that Jared wanted to use that card. So now Friedman, let's see his hand. Hero's Downfall, I think his hand is Hero's Downfall plus Thoughtseize.
Yeah, Thoughtseize not much help right now. He may have the luxury.
He's going to go down to 4.
Of blinking out Obsidat.
Take a draw. Swamp.
No help. You still think Boettcher's ahead here, but it's not rock solid.
Don't think that Friedman can activate Erebos anymore. I don't think.
Well, he hasn't played a land yet, so he could activate it, draw an Elspeth, play that land, and slaughter things.
This is lethal attack.
Yeah, Jared, and some rats are going to have to jump in the way of things. So what he's doing is he's just trying to reduce the size of the rat army and then chump block the rest of it with tokens, buying himself another turn.
It's a good attack by Ben. Also, what also makes this really interesting is, you know, if Boettcher wants to go after Obsidat, it's like, how many creatures do you block with? He's kind of scooping them all up here. So he might just block Obsidat with everybody, which in turn would shut off Erebos' Devotion. So this is an interesting attack here.
That second part of what you mentioned, that it shuts off Erebos' Devotion, that's huge. Jared has to watch his own life total a bit here, too. I mean, he's at 10, but I think he's going to see everybody in front of Obsidat. Yep.
There you go.
All right, he's going to kill Obsidat. Jared's going to go down to 5. Erebos will get turned off, though.
A couple of rats are going to die in this situation. Those are 4/4/4s, so you can put 4 damage on one, 1 on the other. I think that's what Ben's trying to figure out is how do I go about, I have to present lethal damage to, the rats anyway, so.
If Ben downfalls one of them right now, they'll become 3/3s. Obsidat can do 3 and 2, then when the 3 dies, the 2 will die with it.
Yeah, so there'll be 1 left.
There would only be 1 left.
The question is, do you want to downfall one of those rats, or do you want to save that downfall for that beautiful little Nightveil Spectre?
Boy, that sure is the question, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
We'll see what Ben decides. He wants 3 rats gone.
Yeah, so now we deal 3 and 2. Which means, yeah, state-based, that means, yep, those will die. Boettcher will be left with 1. So Obsidat will die, and Boettcher's going to go down to 5. And Ben is going to allow Boettcher to keep Nightveil Spectre.
I like the play by Ben. It means all he needs is just a kill spell to get here now. He's not out of the woods, but he has a lot of outs to draw to, and it's only 1 card worth of outs. It's not like running A into B or something.
Friedman wondering, I think, did I play a land yet this turn or not?
No, I believe he does not play a land. He's counting up. Yep.
There you go.
They've not played it.
Boettcher going to untap very quickly. We'll take a draw. There are some game winners out there for him in Grey Merchant.
Oh, yeah. Grey Merchant's great.
Rakdos Return will do it as well. This is a pretty easy place to start, however, which is get in for 2. Put your opponent down to 2. Underworld Connections is okay. It's better that you have it than your opponent because of Devotion.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, I mean, there's a worry here that Ben can turn on Obsidat. Jared's going to duress the Thoughtseize from Ben's hand. Imagine he'll play Underworld Connections. Why not play Underworld Connections?
That's what the other card is. All right, the other card's Pack Rat, so that's a blocker.
And that's better.
Now, if Ben draws like a Whip or an Obsidat, what is that?
We will see.
He's going to activate this. Oh, boy.
And that's going to do it.
Oh, boy. And he's going to activate Whip with enough mana to bring back Obsidat. That's going to come in. He's going to drain. He's going to gain. He goes up to 4. Boettcher goes down to 3.
It was one of the outs, and that's going to be game.
And
Ben
in
Friedman.
comes everybody. Erebos and Obsnet can be blocked. Those three soldiers cannot. And you see Jared is going to analyze this. Just going to shrug his shoulders and say it's a pretty good top deck for me. And I think in just a moment, Jared's going to come to the same conclusion that we have, which is that is going to do it. You see, Ben's going to count up the damage. See, I block here, you block there, you block there, you block my two biggest guys, you end up taking 3, and that's it. Ben Friedman with a timely top deck of Whip of Erebos is on to the finals of our Invitational.
And Ben doing exactly what his deck was designed to do. He's playing mono black, he's playing some bigger, high-end stuff like Whip, Obsidat, to kind of overpower in the black mirrors, and he does just that. Both players have card draw going, but Ben showing that in the end, he can do the more powerful things as he slams through an army of pack rats.
A very awesome game 4 to watch, and congratulations to Ben Friedman, moving on to the finals of our Season 2 Invitational and 1 match away from qualifying for the Star City Games Players Championship at the end of the year.